Hey y'all. So if you've been paying attention to my posts about the Dolmen, along with me now taking pre-orders for them, I've been waiting on new printed circuit boards that have a new artifact switch implemented in them. And what you see here is a prototype, so that I could test out those new boards. I know it's kind of hard to read. This is just a sticker on a powder coated enclosure. The enclosures that the Dolmen will ship in will be different. They will be black graphics and gray powder coat, but different than this. Much nicer and much easier to read. Anyway, so the new artifact switch. What is it all about? Well, it's kind of a weird, which is wonderful for it says everything about this goddamn thing is weird. I had the Dolmen circuit I have it on a breadboard. It's been on there for over 10 years. And I've, recently when I decided that I wanted to really finalize the circuit and release the pedal, I, went back to the circuit and I was experimenting and I had a couple of prototypes already at that point. That point being like about a year or so ago. So I had something to compare. I was listening to I was playing on the one prototype in particular, and I was like, yeah, this thing's awesome. I didn't even have to, I didn't want to change too much on it. I just wanted to refine every little, morsel of the circuit, and so that it was, everything was special about it, really. Anyway, so then I built some more prototypes recently, and I kept comparing them to the one on the breadboard and the other prototypes to see if I was, the circuit's so strange. Like I said, because it's the stuff that I'm doing to the main chip on here is not something you're supposed to do. So these weird things come about as I'm, torturing this chip and exploiting it and everything. All these weird little sounds and hisses and, just chirps and whistles and everything. And so I wanted to make sure that, the newer prototypes sounded like the older circuit. And they did. Although it took, some tweaking, trying to make sure that, everything was there. And it's kind of thing that, you don't, the pedal and its prototypes are all going to act a little bit different from one another. They're going to produce the same sounds, but they're just going to act, it's not the kind of thing where it's like you set them right side by side and they're identical. They are in many ways, but they're whatever. My point I'm trying to get at is, at one point recently, I was, I'm meticulously, obsessively going over the sounds, in my head and comparing them. And one of the newer prototypes, I was listening to it and I'm like, all right, this is awesome. And then I was comparing it again with the one on the breadboard, and I heard these sounds. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, the prototype doesn't have, there's so much going on that I kind of didn't realize that it was, this newer prototype was missing something. Because it's just such a dense, soundscape that comes from this thing. And I was like, well, what the hell is that? This weird swirling and chirping and whistling that just was one of my favorite parts of the sound, really. And I'm like, why is this new one not doing that? And the one on the breadboard is, and one of the prototypes was doing it too. And I'm going over it and I'm looking at all the components. I'm pulling off, I'm measuring, I'm going nuts. I'm like, this circuit is the same. There's nothing, there's nothing different about the actual circuit. All the parts are the exact same thing, and all the resistors and everything's the same. And I was driving myself nuts. And then I was messing with the breadboard version of the circuit, and I moved. You gotta understand, I should have had it set up so I could show you, but there's wires all coming out of the breadboard, and there's like these toggle switches are wired up. They're like this, and they're stuck in the breadboard, right? So, and I can switch them, just like they're on here. And what I eventually, after losing my freaking mind, what I realized was those those switches and those wires were leaning over to the input of the circuit, essentially, and the wires were going to a different part of the circuit, and the circuit's so sensitive that it was picking up interference through these wires just by being, you have like high gain amplifiers, and then you have these wires that have this other signal going through it, and they're close to that, and suddenly it's just like antennas picking up interference because stuff was just so close to it. And the same thing with the one prototype. It was just built in such a half-assed kind of way. It was just like, I was like, I just wanted to build it. I didn't need to make it pretty just because it's a prototype. And I realized, I'm like, oh, well, these wires are underneath the board here, and that's why it's doing the same thing as the... So after all that, I was like, okay, so what do I do here? And I started just experimenting with the one prototype and plugging wires, just not bare wires, but just wires that don't go anywhere into a certain part of the circuit, and then laying it down across the circuit board. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but like here's a wire and there's another wire and doing that solved the mystery. Suddenly all those weird squealing sounds came back, and I'm like, okay, so what am I going to do? Am I going to leave it like that permanently, or am I going to... And first I had like a dip switch on the board, and I was like, okay, and then I was messing with it. I'm like, no, I want to be able to turn this on and off on top of the pedal, because anytime there's a dip switch on the board, 99% of the people who buy the pedal or whatever it is are not going to open it up and mess with it. They're just not. They're, as long as what they get instantly out of the pedal is to their liking, they're not going to mess around with it, getting inside and switching stuff around. I know that from the Megalith. It's like, I always ask people, I'm like, you ever mess around with this? And they're like, no. It's like, I love the thing the way it is. I don't need to mess with it. And I'm like, yeah, but you can get all these new, different sounds. But if you... Anyway. So, eventually I was like, okay, I need to make it an external external toggle switch, which is what you see here. And there's, just like all the other toggle switches, there's 3 positions. The center position disconnects the antennas from their place that they connect to. Then there's 2 different positions that are connected to 2 different antennas of varying lengths and just in different positions, and they're pretty similar sonic wise, but it depends. Sometimes I'll switch it and the difference between the 2 is very noticeable, and sometimes, depending on how the other controls are set, they're very much alike, or they'll do hardly anything, or That's the thing about this. Everything is connected to one another, and it's like this living collection of organisms, like coral or something, and you do something to the one and the other ones act a little bit differently because of that other one doing something different. So anyway, you guys want to hear what the switch does, right? Okay. Sorry, dropping stuff. See if I can find a pick. All right. Right now, it's that particular artifact switch is in the off position. The other thing to know about this new artifact switch is sometimes you'll turn it on and it won't seem to do anything. Then you adjust this shift control though to kind of like you're tuning like a shortwave radio, and you'll find these spots where that switch does all kinds of craziness. Sorry, I know it's loud. All those slurpy, jerpy. What you were hearing there was me warping the shift control with the CVX CV pedal. Anyway, it's those sounds that I heard and was like, wait a minute, why? I need the new prototype to do that as well. I just love those. It's like combination of birds and shortwave radio interference. I could just play on this thing forever. Yeah, so there you go. That's one more bit of nonsense added to already crazy pedal. Yeah. So, yeah. I don't know what else to say about it. There's just a lot. There's a lot of lot to play with. You know, you can just really get so many different sounds. It's hard to really demonstrate it in a short video. But you know, everybody will do their own exploration of it and find different sounds. Probably find sounds that I haven't even found yet. Because it's like, seriously, there's still days I'm like messing with it. I'm like, oh wait, what's that sound? I'm like, I haven't heard exactly that before, and you know, I played it on it a million times. Anyway, thanks y'all.